Good afternoon and welcome to How to Get More People into Your Climate Job. My name is Inbal. I will be your moderator for today. I'm also the Director of Programs at Work on Climate, and I'm very excited to be here with you all. So our focus today is going to be on the significant shortages in the climate sector and the opportunities that exist to tap into the market. We will explore how we can close the gap by engaging individuals who don't really know how their skills can be used for climate action. So we're going to be sharing insights. We're going to be talking about some solutions to the challenges that you guys have in this room. And we're also going to be building connections because that's where the magic happens. I want to, first of all, thank all of our partners in the room. It is really incredible that we've been able to gather Climatebase Green Jobs Board, Jobs for the Future, Terra.do, and OnePointFive. It is really incredible that we have all of these climate workforce developers in one place, sharing insights. We've all been tackling the problem from lots of different directions. So I think you guys will have a lot of, you'll get a lot of value from all of these different perspectives. All right, so before we jump into introductions, I'll just go over the agenda. We're gonna do a brief welcome note from Cisco as well as SF Climate Week, and then we'll dive into our presentations. We'll have about 30 minutes for an interactive workshop, and we'll end on some networking. Okay, so let me hand over the mic to Alex, who's gonna tell us about some housekeeping.
Just really quickly, you don't need to hear from me. I don't have any special info, but I will tell you where the restrooms are, like right around the corner. There's, it's very important information. There's coffee, there's snacks, which is all for us. So I can't tell you how many times we've tried to walk away with leftovers. Don't make us do that. No food waste here in this room. There's, if you need to make a call, there's little phone booths off to the side. Please really do just make yourself at home. Really a pleasure to have you at our Cisco Meraki office. If you want to hear more about like the Cisco work or the climate work that we do or why we partner with Work on Climate, I'll be around for the afternoon. Happy to talk a little bit more about what we do, but really it's the, like as Inbal said, the magic is all in these people. So I'm so happy to hear from everybody. I'm really excited to introduce my executive director and the leader of the Cisco Foundation, which is Terra.do. He'll tell us just a little bit more about the Cisco Foundation and why we're here and we do what we do. It's all you.
You have the most important job telling people where the bathrooms are and where the food is.
I know. Well, I have the fun job.
Well, first of all, thanks everyone for being here. Welcome to SF1. Wish it was a little sunnier, but great views. So thank you all for coming. I'll just tell you a little bit about Cisco for those of you who may not know a lot about the company or our social impact work. The executive director of the Cisco Foundation, which is a separate legal entity, but really we're aligned to the company. And Cisco's purpose is to power an inclusive future for all. And so we really focus on bringing all of the resources and assets that Cisco has to support organizations that we partner with. So of course we provide funding with a focus on early stage enabled initiatives, tech-enabled, tech-delivered. We donate our technology really to help our partners securely, effectively, cost-efficiently deliver their programs and services, kind of with this better, faster, cheaper mentality. And then we spend a lot of our time, Alex, Julie, Rose, my colleague who's here, our sector portfolio managers spend a lot of our time working with our partners as we're partnering with them over the course of a few years to really lend our expertise, help build capacity of the partners that we work with. If one of our partners needs cybersecurity expert, we can tap into the network of our employees around the world. We have a big focus on impact. For some of you who aren't familiar with this, in late 2015, when Chuck Robbins became our CEO, he challenged us to be big and bold and build on our CSR work, our corporate social responsibility work. we were really excited because he talked about that at the first company meeting. So we announced an ambitious goal that we wanted to positively impact 1 billion people by 2025 through our Cisco Networking Academy and through one of our grant programs, our Global Impact Cash Grant Program. So we went through the process. Happy to say that in December, we announced that we exceeded the goal, 1.1 billion people, and we did it a year early. And we did that really by using technology and investing early stage. And we did have, for people who are skeptics, and you should be, we had our methodology and our progress against that goal externally assured by PricewaterhouseCoopers. But the areas that we focus on are crisis response and critical human needs, which covers things like access to food, shelter, clean water and sanitation, as well as humanitarian relief, education with a focus on school-age kids, STEM education, literacy, as well as teacher professional development, economic empowerment, and that really focuses on helping people access the information, the skills, the resources they need to be independent, to have agency, economic security, and to contribute to community development. Climate kind of came in FY21 when spring of 2021, when we announced our $100 million climate commitment. But even before that, we were sort of dabbling in the climate space before we were ready to stand up a separate funding pillar. And so within our other 3 sectors, we were testing solutions and partnerships, and then we're ready to go when we announced that commitment. But I would say of all of the work that we do across Cisco, skills training, employment opportunities, that's sort of our bread and butter. The Cisco Networking Academy was launched around the same time as the Cisco Foundation, so 26 years ago. And it is a program that we own and operate. We partner with universities, community colleges, nonprofit organizations around the world, and we deliver tech skills training. We have about 12,000 networking academies around the world. Every country you can imagine, we are there. And we reach about 3 million students a year through that program. And that has really blossomed in the last few years. There are exploratory courses. There are foundational courses like a basic digital literacy course. The exploratory courses are, if you think you might have some type of interest in a career in cybersecurity, there's an intro to cyber course. Some of you have heard me say this a couple summers ago. I told my son, you're not sitting around playing soccer and video games all summer. He took the NetAcad Intro to Cyber course. It's self-paced. So we also have offerings where you can do it on your own, asynchronous, or you can be in a classroom setting. And so we really have a deep background in skills for careers. With our economic empowerment work, this is a beautiful fit with the topic we're talking about today. It's a relatively new space for us, climate jobs. But what we look at when we think about what does success look like in this space, it's really, I'm going to steal Goldie, your boss, Mona. So Goldie from Generation, one of our Skills to Careers partners, their CEO says it beautifully, the ABCs. So a job, so helping people get their first job because we focus on underserved populations, then a better job, and a career. So we call it Skills to Careers because we don't want it to just be that first job. We want people to have the skills, the resources so they can progress and have a career. And so that's what we focus on. But I'm so pleased to be talking about this. This is, again, our bread and butter. And I think there's a huge opportunity in climate. I want to thank Work on Climate, all of you for coming, and Alex, hiding in the back for putting this on. So thank you and Joy. And I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you so much. Next.
And there's, by the way, there's room up here, so don't be afraid. People in the back row.
That's right. Yeah, you can come forward. Next we have Evan Hines.
Hello.
CEO of Climatebase.
Yeah, hey, how's everyone doing? Good. When I was invited to come participate today as a speaker and present some insights that we have from our platform, I figured it might be good also to talk a little bit about SF Climate Week, which our team at Climatebase organizes. This is our second year of doing SF Climate Week. 4 years ago, it was an idea, then COVID hit, then we couldn't make it happen. Last year was our first year, and we kicked things off in our inaugural SF Climate Week with just over 100 events, which we thought was really impressive and exciting, and we were, and still are, stoked on that. But I'm way more stoked about the fact that in year 2, we have over 300 events on the calendar. As of yesterday, I think today it might be closer to 330, and over 15,000 people who have signed up to attend these events. And we're not even halfway through the week. So I just want to say thank you to Work on Climate. Thank you to Work on Climate and all the organizations that are here and involved in putting this on. Also, Alex, shout out to you. Alex is a former Climatebase fellow, so good to see you. And a huge shout out to Cisco. I know Cisco has really made it part of their mission to help really support initiatives like Work on Climate and also SF Climate Week. And your participation means a lot to us. So thank you for that. With that, I'll pass it back to the MC. Thanks.
All right. Okay, so it is my pleasure to introduce my fellow man in the trenches, Eugene Kirpichov.
Well, so first I want to say thank you so much again, Cisco, for hosting us here. Thank you all of my co-panelists for doing this work of climate workforce development together with us. And thanks to all of you in the room who are also doing a lot of that work by attracting people into climate work, whether you are an employer or a workforce developer or an advocacy organization or whoever it is you are. So thank you. And through this event, let's learn to do it even better. I'm Eugene. I'm the executive director and founder of Work on Climate. And we're going to talk about how to attract people into working on climate. I'll start with saying a little bit about Work on Climate itself. Here's what we're here to do. We're here to solve the climate talent crisis. And some of you may be wondering, what climate talent crisis? Why is there a crisis? Aren't there so many people who want to find jobs in climate? Is that not enough? Well, it's not enough. We need a few more zeros at the end on top of that, because we're building a new economy, and the new economy is a workforce-sized problem. The problem we're dealing with is a problem of bringing hundreds of millions of people in all kinds of roles, from the roles traditionally associated with climate work, like solar and HVAC installers, to engineering roles like nuclear engineers, carbon accountants, circular economy experts, and so on. And that's an absolutely massive number that's supported by reports from the International Labour Organization. If you look just at the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act alone, that is 9 million good jobs just over the next decade, just from the IRA, just in the US, and that's just new jobs. So if you think about the impact on the workforce, it is the whole workforce. And we are here to help. And we started our work by building the world's largest community for professionals who are actively looking to make the switch, which is the first wave, the very first wave of the problem. And that's where we started. Our community has by now close to 30,000 members. Several thousand of them have actually found jobs and credited to our work. And that's great. And dozens of them also started companies creating more new jobs in this space. So that's good. But like I mentioned, the full problem has several more zeros at the end. It's hundreds of millions of people. And we need to scale this work to the entire workforce. And to do that, we need to go into places where the workforce comes from in the first place. This problem cannot be solved by just working with a selected number of people directly. And to do that, we're working with the ecosystems that shape the workforce to create new pathways into climate roles throughout the whole workforce. And that includes, in our view, two types of pathways through professional communities and pathways through more like top-down powerful institutions like schools, accreditors, economic developers, government, regulatory agencies, and so on. And you can learn more about this work on our website and our blog. I'm here to tell you about how research that we recently conducted can help you be more effective at your part in this. So a big part of this problem, by no means the only part, but a pretty big one, is just facilitating the movement of labor into these roles. Another huge part is upskilling, but this is a pretty big part too. And we focused on the very first wave, which is people who are actively looking for climate work. The next wave is the wave of people who are climate concerned, but not yet looking for a climate job. Then there's going to be a wave after that, which is people who are not climate concerned, for whom it's just a job. And that's where the majority of this is going to be. But we're here today to talk about this part. So how can we get more people who are climate concerned to consider climate jobs? How can we get them to find them compelling? And how can we close the disparities in who seeks climate jobs? That's what our research has been focusing on. And to do that, we conducted a survey of the general climate concerned population of the US in partnerships with several organizations, some of whom are here in the room today. And we looked at over 1,500 climate concerned, climate alarmed Americans with matching certain criteria that indicate that they could be activated by messaging. It's not the only lever we can use, but that's the one that we focused on for this research. So let's talk about what we learned and how you can apply it. First, how can we get more people to consider climate jobs? The most striking finding in the survey, which anecdotally many people know is the case, but it was interesting to put a number in it, it is that the vast majority of people are unaware that climate jobs are even effective as a form of climate action. So when you ask climate concerned people, if more Americans did this, which of these would be more impactful for climate? Only 12% of respondents put jobs at the top, which is, to any of us working in climate, that is baffling. You know, you can put a tiny chunk of your economic value into sustainable choice as a consumer, or you can put the entire power of your talent, the entire economic value you could possibly create into climate through a job, and people don't realize that. But the good news is that just the fact of exposing people to a broader definition of what a climate job is, which dispels some of people's misconceptions about this, and that 12% jumps to 83%. And over half of the respondents by the end of the survey say that they're at least somewhat likely to begin a climate job search in the next year. So what this means for you is that you can build awareness of climate jobs and how different people can be part of the solution and how impactful it is as a form of climate action. All kinds of organizations can build this awareness. Especially, I would like to see climate advocacy organizations advocate for this rather than for writing more letters to your representatives, which is also important, but this too. So this is the first actionable finding. And we saw in free-form text responses that people really had a light bulb moment. They say, I had no knowledge of these opportunities, but now that I'm aware, I'm going to look for this. I didn't have any idea about this, but now I'm motivated to help fix the planet with my talent. The next barrier that we saw that is preventing people from considering climate jobs is that they simply don't think that there is room for them in these jobs. They don't think that their skills are useful. Even if they do think that their skills maybe could be useful or they could get the skills, they don't know what skills to get or where to get them, and that is paralyzing. So if somebody is thinking about jumping into this ambiguous space about which they don't know a lot, they think it's not for them, they don't know how to possibly begin, of course they're not going to look for a job in this space until somebody helps them resolve the ambiguity. So different types of us here in the room can help tackle this from different angles. You can explain, as an employer, for example, if you have a climate job, please frame it in terms of how it uses non-climate skills. If you're an educator, for example, if you're a school, not necessarily a climate-focused school, explain how your students who definitely care about climate, how their skills can apply for building climate solutions rather than just advocating for climate change, right? If you're an employer, make clear what skills you do and do not need in your roles, because people probably have misconceptions about what skills you require. You probably don't require a lot of the things that they think you require. And please point people to ways to acquire these new skills. The second part of what I would like to tell you today is how can we get people to see your climate jobs as compelling? Well, first of all, unsurprisingly, people don't just care about meaningful work. First of all, even among the climate concerned and climate alarmed, not everybody prioritizes the meaningfulness of their work in the things that they care about when they choose work. But even among those that do, they still overwhelmingly, of course, care about work-life balance, stability, compensation, career progression, and so on. So we found through this research that looked at what is it that people care about, that you can, if you have 3 messages to put in your message about attracting people into your climate jobs, put in a combination of messaging about team quality, about the type of impact, and I'll say more about this soon, and about personal and career growth. And about 75% of your candidates will find some part of that very compelling. So more specifically, let's talk about how to frame the impact of climate work. And really interesting finding here basically is that the main factor is immediacy of climate impact and climate benefits. So the people who are alarmed about climate and the people who are merely concerned about climate differ greatly by a factor of several times in their likelihood to search for a climate job or to find one. And really the most striking difference between them is whether they think that climate change will harm them versus whether it will harm future generations. So some of them think that it's for somebody else to suffer from and somebody else to solve, versus they think it's happening here now and I have a role to play. So what you can do to activate people is make it more immediate in their eyes. You can explain to them why is the particular sector that you're working in, why is the problem in that sector urgent, how does it relate to their particular community, and how does your solution benefit their particular community? Are there co-benefits? Does it involve your community in a particularly beneficial way, and so on. And finally, I wish I had more time to talk about this. You can find the full report on our website, but I would like to talk a little bit about how we can close some disparities in who seeks climate jobs. And the key insight we found in this regard is that the biggest predictor among all demographic factors of whether somebody is likely to seek a climate job is their sense of influence in their current job. And when it comes to correlation to more traditionally considered demographic factors, we find that it should be obvious to everybody in this day and age, but women unfortunately feel less influence in their current job. But what's worse, they're even more affected by the influence they feel in their likelihood to seek a climate job. As for how this relates to what you should do about this in your messaging, we note in our findings that those who feel a lower sense of influence are more skeptical about climate solutions and more likely to feel that there is no point in it anyway. And they need to see more credibly transformational approaches in order to be sold in it. So people who feel less influence are less likely to feel that it is possible to do something within the current system. So they need to feel that the solution you're doing, it challenges the current system and that it does this credibly. So in your messaging, you can talk about how the job of this person has influence within the wider context of your organization and is transformational for your ability to do this. Talk about why your approach will actually work, why it is not a pipe dream, and why it will have substantial impact rather than just make a tiny dent in a tiny corner. And talk about how your approach challenges the wider system, how it supports systemic change. And even if your organization is not a systems change organization, you can still make some tie to how your work is part of the wider transition to something really big, right? So I'll say one more thing on this. So what this means is that basically if you don't do this, that means that people who feel less sense of influence will be more skeptical about your jobs and will be less likely to apply. And that means, among other things, that you will probably get fewer women and fewer other groups that feel less sense of influence and are more skeptical about their ability to create change within the current system. So there's a lot more in the report, but because I'm limited on time, I have to wrap here and just thank the team and our partners. We had really incredible volunteers who worked to create this research. Kavita from Radiant Market Research. We had support from Terra.do, and we had support from Pure Spectrum, a market research firm. And we had some support from the Yale program on climate change communication as well in making this happen. And hopefully now all of you will be able to put this into action in your work. Thank you.
You can find our report on our website. I will also send you guys a link after this event. Okay, so next I want to welcome Evan again to the stage. He's going to be talking to us about the dynamics of the climate job market as well as why some roles are really hard to fill. So thank you, Evan.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Hey folks, again. So as I mentioned, Climatebase, we organize SF Climate Week, but I think most of the people who interact with us know us for our work on the climate jobs front. Full disclosure, my slides are a lot less pretty than Eugene's. I'm also going to be flying through some charts at various times, and I'm sure some of you are going to want me to pause and take a little bit more time on some of them, but I'm not going to be able to because I don't have a lot of time. So if you see any data and you're interested in getting more from me, we can do that after I go through some of the insights. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about sort of the landscape of climate jobs. What are the hardest to fill roles in this space? And I'm also going to be talking about some of the barriers faced by climate job seekers that they have self-reported to us as part of why they struggle to get a job in the climate workforce. Setting the stage again. So Climatebase, at Climatebase, we are on a mission to mobilize talent to work on climate solutions. Excuse me. We're sort of like three core elements at Climatebase in terms of like what we are. We are first and foremost a climate jobs platform, so we're a hiring platform. We also run the Climatebase Fellowship. This is a climate career accelerator. We run 2 cohorts per year with a few hundred folks in each cohort that we select from a few thousand applicants that we get every application cycle. And the program is really designed to help people who are already working in climate accelerate their career, but of course also to help folks who want to work in climate land their first job in this space. We also have quite a few founders that are launching companies out of the program, so that's cool too. And then the third piece of Climatebase is, of course, SF Climate Week, and I already spoke a little bit about that. But the common thread across all three sort of elements of what we are is this mission that we have to mobilize more people to work on climate solutions. All right, so let's talk about the platform, and then I'll dive into some of the data. So every year, over 1 million people use climatebase.org to discover jobs across over 5,000 employers that have joined the platform in the past 4 years since we launched. And we've been able to facilitate now over 250,000 matches, matching job seekers with opportunities at such organizations. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of the data that we found, not only from our jobs platform and actually breaking that data down, because we're able to track time to hire, meaning how long does a job stay live on Climatebase. And this data is actually being imported directly from these companies' ATSs, their application tracking systems. So it's actually the source of truth in terms of, we know concretely how long it takes, say, to fill a software engineering role in carbon removal, for example. We're also going to be taking a look at which sectors are hiring for which kind of roles. So actually, we'll start with that one, and then I'll also be talking about some insights that we've been able to collect from our users, from our job seekers on our platform, who have self-reported some pretty interesting information to us over the past couple of years that we've been doing this work. All right, so high level, where are the jobs in climate? This is what our data shows. This is looking at tens of thousands of jobs that we've analyzed on Climatebase. And you'll see that energy, transportation are sort of tied for the #1 spot here, followed shortly by food and ag and land use. We sort of combine those together because oftentimes they're two sides of the same coin. Followed then by buildings and carbon removal jobs, circular economy focused jobs. This would be like consumables and things of that nature, followed by policy and advocacy roles, and then finally media and journalism. And there is one, I believe that very tiny sliver right there, the very thin yellow one, I believe that is ocean-based climate solutions. All right, this is the breakdown in even more detail. So the way that we sort of constructed this taxonomy for context is we looked at our partner Project Drawdown and the way that they have kind of constructed their taxonomy of climate solutions and sectors. And in between those two layers, between sectors and solutions, they have this sort of, this like sector subgroup layer. I think it's probably the most interesting layer personally, because it's like sectors, but much more actionable and not as granular as solutions. So feel free to take a look at this, but I got to fly through it. Yes, and then when we look at like sort of the breakdown of what kind of orgs, what size orgs are hiring, this is the breakdown that you see here. You'll note that most of the jobs, unsurprisingly, are coming from organizations that have already scaled up a bit, but perhaps aren't like multi-thousand person companies. Those are relatively rare in the climate space still. All right, this is a crazy slide. I'm not going to read it, don't worry. This is like when we look at all the jobs across all sectors, right? And we just break it down by role type. This is what that breakdown looks like. So it's basically, this is the part that's important. There is a role for everyone to play in this space. We need lawyers, we need communicators, we need software engineers, we need hardware engineers, we need designers, we need advocacy folks, et cetera, et cetera. So there is truly a role for everyone to play in the climate workforce. These are, by the way, just to synthesize some of that previous information, Bloomberg ran a story looking at our climate jobs data. This actually chart is directly from their article. So these are the top roles, just to synthesize that. Again, I always hesitate to show this information because I feel like it tells this without the previous slide kind of gives like a bit of a skewed narrative, right? It's not like, oh, software engineer, you know, if you want to work in climate, you should be a software engineer. No, that just constitutes 10% of all the jobs in the space. And that's only according to our data, right? And our data has biases too within it. So again, everyone has a role to play in this space. All right, these next ones I'm really truly going to fly through, but just know that they all kind of break down basically like when we look at each role type and then what sector are those is that role type most in demand in. This is what this data is going to show here. And on the bottom right, it'll show time to hire. So this is how long these role types stay open on Climatebase. And again, this data is being pulled directly from these employers' ATSs. So it's like the source of truth on this. So I'll just read the time to hire. So for operations, time to hire is 58 days. For sales and biz dev roles, it's 65 days. Marketing and comms roles, 57 days. HR and people, 76 days. So that's actually a big kind of bottleneck area, by the way. Project management roles, 58 days. Product management roles, 71 days. Design roles, 73 days. So I'm gonna keep flying through these. This is like a summary of the last ones that I just went through. This is software engineering roles. It takes a very, very long time for folks to fill software engineering roles relative to other positions. And I'm going to call out one area in particular, machine learning roles as a subcategory within software engineering. Yeah, the average time to hire is nearly 150 days. So big bottleneck right there. And this is a full breakdown of all the different subcategories in software engineering. As you can see, that big outlier at the bottom is machine learning engineers. All right, this is data-oriented roles. I'm just going to keep flying through these. These are the different subcategories within that. Again, if you want any of this information, I'll send you the deck after. But out of respect for our next speakers, I'm just going through the next ones. The summary, by the way, there's lots of science roles too. Lots of sustainability opportunities as well. And I'm going to keep flying through just to get to, okay, this part. So when we look at all the high-level categories for role types, this is what it ends up looking like in terms of the hardest to fill positions. So right up at the top is data science and analytics-oriented roles. So data roles are the hardest to fill within the climate workforce at 117 days to average time to hire, followed by software engineering at 106, HR and talent at 100. And yes, there is a lot of irony to that, of course, that is not missed. And then mechanical engineering roles, followed by electrical engineering roles. These are just the top 5 hardest to fill sort of like job categories, role categories, I should say. And again, this is looking at it across all the different sectors. So if folks are interested in tackling any of this sort of very broad challenge that we're talking about today in terms of getting more people in climate jobs, there's a lot of opportunity just to sort of solve for these bottlenecks for these top positions right here. Okay. I want to call this out too. So we did a big survey of our users a while ago. And unfortunately, I don't have time to get into like all the interesting, cool data there, but I'm going to call out some interesting stuff. And part of what inspired us to like really just get more data from our users about how's it going in terms of their job search, right? Or where are they struggling? Is just looking at the past couple of years, some headlines that have come out talking about this specific sort of challenge set. 40% of millennials have chosen a job due to an employer's sustainability practices and mission, right? So that's a really interesting piece of data. And when you combine that with the fact that 75% of millennials say that they're actually willing to take a pay cut, in fact, to work for an environmentally responsible organization, this just goes to show that young workers in particular, millennials and Gen Z and younger, are extremely eager to be a part of the climate workforce and to get working on these big challenges that we have within the climate space. From our survey and this is again from a while ago, I'd be interested to run the survey again today, but we found some interesting stuff. First and foremost, finding relevant jobs is a challenge. When we asked our users prior to discovering Climatebase, what were the biggest challenges? Finding the jobs was unsurprisingly the biggest challenge for them. So just like, yes, everyone knows about LinkedIn, but it doesn't seem as though that has always been useful to people who are on the job hunt for roles in climate. 64% of our users from 1900 respondents said that they struggled with job discovery prior to using Climatebase. And then this next sort of chunk of category, imposter syndrome, I think is really, really important to call out. Over half of the people who we surveyed believe that their professional background was a barrier, and 36% of them didn't feel that they had the right educational background in order to work in climate. In fact, anecdotally, I'll share that I hear from folks all the time, oh, well, I don't know how I am going to work in climate because I'm not a climate expert. It certainly helps to know a lot about climate, but the reality is, like, we don't necessarily need everyone working in climate to be a climate expert. A lot of the information about, a lot of the relevant information about, what you would do in a climate job is going to be very specific to what that organization is working on specifically. So, I think that people sort of incorrectly attribute some of their challenges to this, but in reality, I view most of that as being imposter syndrome. All right, I'm almost done. Oh, there we go. Wait, hold on. Seems like there's a slight delay. Okay. We also asked in the same survey, just gonna give it a sec. Okay. We wanted to figure out, like, how does people's discovery of climate jobs impact their confidence that they can work in this space, and perhaps even other factors. So these are some interesting tidbits. Respondents reported that using Climatebase led to a 47% increase in their confidence that they can get a job in climate. What we also saw was really interesting, that people said that we've asked, like, what was your confidence level prior to using Climatebase? We also asked, what is your, like, feelings of climate anxiety prior to discovering Climatebase and then after, right? And what we found is that respondents reported a over 30% decrease in their feelings of climate anxiety, which is very interesting to me as a climate nerd. And 28% felt more optimistic about their ability to make a positive impact on climate. And these are folks that are just looking for jobs and not necessarily actually getting them even. So just learning about climate jobs seems to empower people to take action on climate. It gives them more confidence that they have a role within the climate workforce, and it even decreases their feelings of climate anxiety. And I think in a day and age where, the younger generations seem to be really struggling with climate anxiety and anxiety in general, perhaps, this insight, to me, speaks volumes about the importance of this work and getting more people working in climate, or even just learning about these opportunities. All right. So the bottom line here, everyone has a role to play in the climate workforce. There is an opportunity for everyone, regardless of their background. We need to drive more awareness about the diversity of these kinds of roles within climate. And then finally, one of the benefits of getting more people to learn about climate jobs is not just to the employers doing this critical work on developing and scaling climate solutions, but it's also good for the public. It makes them more empowered, it makes them feel that they have a greater impact to play. It gives them more confidence that they, as an individual, can make a positive personal impact on the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evan. Next, I would like to welcome Usman Fahimullah. I hope I did not mispronounce that. He's the co-founder of Green Jobs Board, and he's going to talk to us about how to attract more diverse talent to climate jobs. Thank you.
Awesome. Hey everyone, how's it going? Before I get started, I just want to give a brief thank you to everyone here, as well as Work on Climate for having us be here and talk. We're a really small organization, so having a stage here means a lot. And then I'd like to also thank Climatebase for doing SF Climate Week. I mean, New York has been the big space, so having something in the West Coast is always amazing, and this community out here is really beautiful. So love to see it. Love to see us thriving. Go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk to you guys about how to attract more diverse candidates into your company. But before we get into that, just a brief intro to who we are as an organization. We're a simple career platform that enables employers and job seekers to have more transparency between each other. Our vision is to really build the standard for an equitable and sustainable future together. That's a lot of vagueness, but what it really just translates to is that we really want to build more communication and more conversation between employers and job seekers, where today it really feels like it's job seekers versus job seekers to get a job. I think if we're really building a new green economy, I think we should reframe that to we're building the future economy. So rethinking how we really hire and bring in applicants into the workforce, especially the green workforce. So let's dive into this. So in order to solve the climate crisis, we must build more diverse and equitable workplaces. I think this is pretty much a given from everyone here. As you kind of seen from the data before, my slides will be less data driven. So I get to take a deep breath on that. But because they've done the job for me, so amazing. But basically, as they've all said prior, we need a more diverse and equitable workplace to really solve these challenging problems, right? Divergent thinking is super valuable. So what are these normal groups that are excluded from these conversations? It's the same group we all know and love. Female, BIPOC, LGBTQI+, youth, people with disabilities, seniors, and low-income communities. This is something that's not new. Like, I'm not talking about in anything new here. I mean, like, I'm a minority myself. I grew up in SoCal, like, next to, like, a waste plant, so I understand. But this is something that we can really redefine, right? Like, if we're calling this a future economy, right? These are people too. It's not just that standard office dude who like works here, right? It's all these other folks that are really going to redefine how we really shape and communicate with each other, right? Bringing more voices, kind of makes better solutions. It's just kind of obvious. So now, like, what's funny is we're talking about the green economy in the future, right? So what does today's clean energy workforce look like relative to the rest of the economy? We're supposed to be better, right? There we go. Not really. You can see like this is the rest of the economy, y'all. Like this is like everything else but green stuff. So like 8%, 16.5%, 27%. Like we can do better than this. Like we're not supposed to be there. We're supposed to be like all the way up there, So we got some work to do. So what I'm gonna bring in is just some 3 quick tips, air quote that, on how we can start, bringing more diversity into your company and how can we like build those structures in place to do so. So let me go next. There we go, a little illustration. So tip number 1, start developing an internal diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. So this is not a quick tip, but it's very, very much of a start. So, the reason why this matters is that a lot of us here, right? Climate tech, 40% of global climate tech companies are located here in the Bay Area. That means we're all very early startups, right? We have a chance to really structurally change how we structure companies from the ground up. So if we start this plan early on, we can really start investing in hiring more diverse immediately and bringing a more diverse candidate from the ground up at the start. Not later, not implementing in the future, but today. Now, it will take investment in time and resources, and I know being a small founder or running a small business takes time, but building in those initial steps at least will allow you to cultivate that culture that you really want, which is, again, to build the future economy. Tip number 2, source diverse talent at multiple levels of the company. So as you grow your company, you'll have multiple people in multiple roles, right, where they're shift workers, different types of people working in different spaces, whether like you work at a factory, right? There's people with different skill sets. And so really creating clear job position descriptions that showcase the skills and talents that you really need for that role goes a long way, right? We got to stop doing these vague job descriptions, y'all, like 5+ years of using this tool, like what does that even mean? Like let's be much more clear about the skills and sets that we actually need for that role. And let's start making it more actionable for people actually looking to apply. That's kind of why a lot of the anxiety and all that stuff exists is I don't know what I'm looking for or what roles I'm applying to half the time. So really demystifying that will really help. And it also helps a lot of underrepresented populations, right? A lot of women do not tend to go for higher roles because out of fear that they may not get it because they don't meet that criteria, compared to men, which apply to anything, which is actually a statistic. So I wish I had a slide here for that, but so that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, build relationships early with community-based organizations and workforce development groups. That's why we're all here talking to you guys, to get you guys to get interested in talking to these groups who are on the booths, trying to talk to job seekers, talking to a lot of companies to really help you guys hire more diverse candidates, hire more equitable people. Really what's important is that we want to build stronger relationships and really build a stronger future together. And by doing that, we must collaborate with the people who are on the booths. That includes, social media influencers, a lot of different organizations like my favorite is Intersectional Environmentalists, people who understand the community and what they're looking for and how you can speak directly to them. And that should be it. So everyone, I hope you guys can find your climate space. If you guys want to reach out to me for any more information, my email's right here, my number. If you want to learn more about who we are, our website is greenjobsboard.us. The .com is very expensive, y'all. Our social is Green Jobs Board. So please follow us there. Thank you.
All right, next we have Anshuman Bhavna, who is the founder of Terra.do, and he's going to talk to us about upskilling for the green economy. Terra.do has been at the forefront of the upskilling game through their educational platform. So I don't need welcome Anshuman.
It's maybe a photo I need to update by now with past its utility. I'm Anshuman Bhavna. I'm the founder of this company called Terra.do. And I definitely want to talk a little bit about what we do and what we've learned. But before that, I just want to understand the audience a little bit here first, so I don't go off on a completely different tangent. How many of you are here looking for jobs for yourself in climate? I'm assuming that's a relatively, small number. Okay, got it. Okay, cool. But you're welcome. Awesome. Thank you. You're here. How many of you are actually trying to figure out getting a lot more people working in climate? Okay, perfect. Okay. So I will therefore focus on the parts of my presentation which are a lot more on that. So just this is who we are, which is think of us as the climate university for the world. Think of us as a place where people who are looking to get started or go deeper in their climate work, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means, come to and they get started here. Our mission is actually one shared with Work and Climate, who we love to bits, which is to get 100 million people working in climate this decade. The core idea here, and this is the most boring slide, forget about all the subtext here, but the whole idea is that there is a flywheel. That's our theory of change. And the flywheel actually starts out with getting people to understand that this, I think a couple of presenters talked about how there is this barrier, which is climate is not for me because I don't have the skills, I don't have the background, etc. So for us, getting that out of the way is the most important part. So our flywheel starts with learning, which is people come in here because they realize that they can pick up individual skills or even foundational knowledge about what climate is all about and what these different sectors are, what these different solutions are, and so on. But the second thing that happens is I put alumni because we're a university, remember, but it's basically a community. And the big insight for us has been that this gets lonely very quickly. And the fact that we're all in this room, you can already feel that energy. But the moment you get out into the big bad world, you're kind of the one person or the very few people in your local group who is thinking about climate, talking about climate. If you're in the tech nerd world, they're like, oh, you're not doing anything in AI. If you are in you know the vibe there. So therefore, the thing that we've realized is that bringing people together into a community and also using that as an opportunity for continuous learning is extremely critical. Now, what is continuous learning? We've heard this term. It's a very term of trade in the education space. But the way it applies here is that the velocity at which everything in climate is moving, whether it's technology, which you all know and love, but also policy, also what's happening on the social justice side. And by the way, we are still talking about only the US. Now expand that to the rest of the world, which is, and this is the beauty and the bane of this public commons that we have called our planet, right? Which is all of this impacts us. So therefore, this ability to learn continuously, not just through learning programs, but from your peers, but from people who have already made that transition and have learned some hard facts about what it takes to actually be effective in the climate role that you're right now. That is something that we care obsessively about. So that's the alumni, the community that we have. And then, of course, I think we made this, I heard this earlier about the ABC, which is you actually have to eventually get to careers, which is that you have to show that this is not just a crime of passion to get into climate, right? It's not because you had wildfires one fine day and you woke up and you switched your big tech job and now you're kind of really ruined the day when that happened. There is actually an entire career path that you have to identify and show people that you can build this out. So that's the core thing, our core philosophy. We run, we're a university, so we run all these different kinds of programs. What I'm calling out here is this program is something that we built because we needed it for ourselves. This is something that we've graduated a few thousand people already from. But all these other programs, and they range from everything from carbon removal, which is very exciting, to soil health, which may not be exciting to everyone. They are actually created by top climate experts that we invite, who build these programs on top of our platform, who we find the audience for, and who then not only teach this program, but also build a micro community around each of these different topics. And that's what the continuous learning is all about, which is when you graduate from any of these programs is when the journey truly begins. And we want this list to be 10 times larger in terms of topics, and then crossed by every geography and every function, skill, et cetera, et cetera. So that is the scope of what we're trying to do here. Lots of interesting outcomes, which I'm not going to necessarily right now. Some interesting numbers. We have now 100,000 members across the world. They're from about 80 plus countries. US is actually our largest market, but only about 40% of all our learners and our community are from here. And they've gone on to do all kinds of incredible things. One of the cool hacks that I discovered is that the alumni community, and I think Eugene is also discovering that, which is that your own community, if you do a good job, turns out to be your employers, turns out to be your investors. And in our case, it turns out that I'm a small angel investor, so I also get to invest in all these very cool companies that come out of Terra all the time. We also try to put together a lot of the jobs together, but I think that's something which I think Climatebase and Green Job Board and all of these guys are doing a fantastic job. And finally, all of this is kind of sitting inside a single platform. Now, I want to just spend a little bit of time just talking about 3 slides. This first one is about my core beliefs, having done this now for about 4 years and having come in from the outside. Belief number 1 is that every job is a climate job. In fact, I was challenged by my dentist, and I actually sent back a long screen back to them on how their job could be a climate job if they so desire. So please ask me for it if you really want it. But you can also have ChatGPT, by the way. Yes. I think the other point I think everyone beautifully made, which is that all climate tech companies, and I cross that out because literally, I mean, they are just companies, right? So they all need marketers, accountants, etc. I won't belabor this point. But I think the third one is also important to call out, especially in this audience, is that climate tech is awesome. I love it. But climate tech is a tiny sliver of the full climate economy, right? So a lot of the thing that we realize when we have people come in into the programs is that climate tech has this very, I should say, this hard edge to it, hard in the sense of hard sciences edge to it. And people get turned off by that. People kind of have this imposter syndrome all the time. And the fact that we work with a lot of nonprofits, in fact, on the B2B side, so we upskill organizations as well. Some of our biggest customers are people like the World Bank or California's governor's office of data and innovation. These are the kind of people that we want to work with, and the kind of roles that they have and the kind of climate jobs that they have look unlike anything from the climate tech world. So again, when you're using these words and when you're talking this language, please talk the language of the full climate economy. And maybe even the word economy is a bit of a misnomer because a lot of people don't align to the economic incentive of trying to change everything. There is this relationship that we have with each other and with our planet that people relate to more holistically. So think about the language that you're using when you're talking about this. Second is I just had this slide on how to deepen your work in climate. And the way we think of it is that, as Inbal was saying, which is that there is this universe of 2 kinds of people in this world. One is people who want to transition into a new climate job. And a lot of us are actually building out stuff that helps make that happen. And then second, they are people who are upskilling in their existing job. Just a quick set of insights on that, which is on transitioning the usual learn, meet, apply, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that, and this we've seen a lot in the people who are trying to make this transition from a place of passion, they're surprised by how long it has taken them to make that transition happen. So it gets long and it gets often lonely. So please set those expectations accordingly. And this is not an easy job market in the first place. It does matter to show intent. You can show intent in all kinds of different ways. You can do that by doing courses like the ones that we offer. You can do projects. You can actually participate in amazing communities like Work on Climate and so on. And finally, a large percentage of these jobs are actually not in job boards, right? So I think we all know this intuitively from our own life experiences. That job was not on the job board. You met someone at a conference, and you talked about the skills that you had, and that ended up crafting a new kind of jobs. So definitely be open to that. But on the upskilling side, I do want to call out that this is 10 times, if not 100 times bigger than if you're talking about climate talent transition, than just people switching their jobs completely, which is people bringing a climate lens to what they already do. Now, just some stat, which is that about 23% of the Fortune 1000 companies by themselves have SBTI targets, which are therefore hopefully credible. And they employ about 10 million people already. So therefore, each of them, if they were truly being able to apply the climate lens to what they do, would be in a climate job by my definition, by hopefully your definition as well. We know that, and Drew is here, we were just on a panel yesterday talking about this on how sustainability teams are chronically understaffed. So therefore, if you're sitting inside one of these organizations, remember that if you raise your hand, you might be actually welcomed with open arms. And third is that learn green skills, which is I think I saw someone from Gianna from LinkedIn. Yeah, there you are. So LinkedIn has a beautiful economic graph about what percentage of greenness is there in every job. A similar effort, I know that Jobs for the Future is actually doing here, and Taj is here, called the Green Quotient. These are all things that are essentially signaling that there are specific green skills and green attitudes that are sitting inside every single one of these jobs that could be activated with the right kind of learning and exposure. And this I'll probably skip. This was my slide that I was going to be about, well, if you're one of the insurgents sitting inside your large organization, and you really want to build a culture, then what are the 1, 2, 3 that you need to do? So I put them in a nice 3 C's framework, just to get as a homage to my consulting career back in the day. But I will not belabor that. That's all I have. Let's figure out a way to get 100 million people in climate.
All right, so we've been doing a lot of context switching here. So why don't we all just take a deep breath for 3 seconds. Okay, great. We have 2 more speakers. So I want to welcome Matthias Mulbauer, who is the founding partner of OnePointFive, and he's going to be talking to us about recruitment strategies.
Thank you so much. That breathing really helped me, so perfect timing. I'd like to first point out maybe 4 things. 1, I'm matching my bio. I completely forgot which slides I used. I really got to change those up. And then three things. It's good that Charu's just left the room. The first thing that I'd like to be transparent about is that I hope that you guys don't do this. Don't mention that you'll get on a Zoom call with someone at Cisco that use WebEx. Embarrassing. 2, we're sharing some of these slides a little bit ahead of time from some white paper that we're putting together for New York Climate Week. So out of transparency, we're sort of doing an answer first. We're still doing the analysis, so trying to show an interesting model that we're thinking about at the moment. So would love your feedback. And I think this community practice here is welcoming and warm. So yeah, just wanted to mention that transparently. And then the final thing that I'd like to be transparent about, just looking at the other slides, we're probably going to need to hire a designer or a bootstrap team. So the slides that you see coming up, it's really about the substantive, actionable stuff on the slides. So just think about that. Keep me in mind. All right, so let's kick things off. So I'm Matthias Mulbauer from OnePointFive. Founding partner, we are a 4-year young organization based in New York. We do 2 things, 2 hats. The first hat, we help organizations decarbonize their strategy and operations. We work with Fortune 500 companies, measure their emissions, and then get them to decarbonizing. The other hat, and this sort of plays into the second hat, we have a cohort-based program that goes for 8 weeks. We're focused on the corporate sustainability and skills space. So it's a little bit more narrow, but it's really about building up these sustainability professionals in the space. We call it a sustainability consultant course, but from A/B testing, that's what actually hits when people are interested in getting to the space. It's like a Swiss Army knife. That's a beacon of light for people that want to do more action in the space. All right, so let's get started. Amazing picture featured again, same shirt. All right, so as I mentioned, we're busy working behind the scenes. The launch is coming for New York Climate Week in September with our white paper. I'm going to share a little bit about what we're talking about in this white paper today. I'm going to start off with this sort of fact. And there's a few job seekers in the space, but this kind of ties to trying to shift the mindset on the supply side, not the job seeker side, because this is what they're facing. There's millions of workers that will be needed to solve the world's climate problems and sustainability goals. But at the same time, this is what we see from people that come through our course. And it's really difficult for us to explain what the hell's happening. And so I'm going to spend this discussion talking about the supply side, the hirers, the hiring managers, and the companies that are trying to upskill, hire their talent. Alrighty, so a bit of really consulting style slide. I'll just briefly talk about this. About 30 plus interviews we've had with sustainability leaders from various industries like media, tech, finance, professional services, energy. We have a couple nice fancy logos on the side on the right. We've also reviewed a few papers in the space, including the Work on Climate one. Fantastic job, Eugene. And we're collating all this into the future of the workforce white paper. So I think there's a LinkedIn post that can maybe highlight these slides a bit better. So I'm just going to talk through these very briefly. The skill gap is getting bigger, something like 22.4% on the supply side. So more skills are being needed, but the demand side's growing about 10%. Last year, green hiring was still resilient, which was fantastic. I think it's about 15%. Don't quote me on that. And we are seeing that people that have green skills are getting hired at a rate of like 29% as well. And of course, Greta need to. And then what we're also seeing is that when we look at sustainability leadership, this is really fascinating, right? We're seeing a lot of people hired internally without going out to the job market. And this is interesting from a capacity perspective. There's some challenges and opportunities here. At the same time, the people that are in the leadership positions that are supposed to be working on these lofty SBTI goals, for example, they don't really have an academic degree in sustainability as well. So this is a pretty complicated slide. The next slide simplifies it a little bit, but this is from a fantastic IBM report that we've reviewed that really talks about these three phases of what we see sustainability, corporate sustainability in organizations. We have this pretty typical like compliance, risk-averse, risk-focused sustainability team approach, right? And you have probably a small team, they're doing everything they can, but it's really coming from this like playing defense perspective. The next phase we're seeing is probably sustainability as a project. You have some decarb initiatives out there in your organization. You're starting to see some sustainability happen across the organization. But what we're really seeing is the best companies are moving to this best-in-class embedded sustainability model, which is really fascinating. And this is going to tie a little bit into every job as a climate job and that narrative that we've heard before. And so what we need to do is move away from this nascent compliance-focused approach and this evolving project-focused approach to this embedded sustainability, where we are anchoring sustainability into all functions and departments as well. And that actually shifts the mindset of how we need to hire in the space. So some of these problems here that we're seeing, I'm going to skip through this. The CSO is becoming a hero in a lot of different functions. It's pretty fascinating, but I'll move on. So right now, our current approach to hiring is not going to get us to where we need to get in terms of embedding sustainability into an organization fast enough. And so we're trying to put together some thinking model around this that hopefully can inspire some hiring changes in the way that you look at the job market when you're looking at building up your corporate sustainability teams. So right now what we're seeing is a pretty static hiring approach, right? And I think this is connected to some of the data that we saw from Climatebase, where people are finding imposter syndrome around their hiring opportunities. And so what we see here is this very typical, level of sustainability education. We want that to be fairly high. We also want high industry experience. So everyone's looking for this unicorn on the right-hand side. And this creates some pretty standard practices, right? So the unicorn is going to be the ideal hire. If we're getting someone from a sustainability academic background, that's going to be a technical hire. But otherwise, we're not going to hire the two folk on the bottom. We're not going to hire the person that's early career. We're not going to hire a career pivot as well. And this is where that imposter syndrome comes in. You don't have the background in order to get into a sustainability job. And so what does this actually mean in practice? So it's a crowded market. You're looking at all the same candidates. You're getting these really bloated job descriptions, and it's really challenging to actually find the right talent because everyone's looking in the same space. And so what this means is there's going to be limited supply. You have to pay them a lot of money. They're unicorns that you're trying to hire. See some nodding in the front here, which is fantastic. It's a new slide, so that's good. And then we have unreasonable expectations, like 15 years carbon accounting experience. And TCFD is only from 2015, right? We're not even 10 years in. We also see that, so there we go, the technical hire. This is also a fairly strange hire as well. They have limited industry experience, but it seems like they'll hit the ground running in the role. But only about 10% of their actual job is informed by what they studied, right? So there's this mismatch of what our expectations are aligning with those hires and actually what's going to happen in practice, right? This person will still require investment, but if we have this static hiring approach, that's not going to happen. Alrighty, so what we need to do is go over to the axes over here. I'm going to circle this over here. We need to focus on shifting our mindset from education to more of a skills-based education, right? And that's going to unlock some different parts of the market. So now we have shifted this axis here. And so you can do that mental shift in your mind. So now this changes the job market a little bit more, right? So we have industry experience still on the top axis. On the side, we have level of skills-based education. So now we have this early career person, and there's an option to go up if we increase their skills. We have this non-sustainability functional expert. That's like the career pivoter that you've heard about all the time. This person, if they have the right skills, can be a fantastic embedded sustainability unicorn, or they can be someone passionate with sustainability skills. And so this model then changes this, right? We now have the embedded sustainability unicorn. The unicorn still exists. That's going to be the ideal hire. But we also have more potential in these other categories as well. We have a high potential hire. We have a potential for upskilling as well. And we have a potential hire. And so how could you then use that model and shift the way you're thinking about talent if we start to change these axes here? Right. I think I've gone through these slides, so I will wrap up in a second. All right, so what does this look like in practice? Well, there's a fantastic KPMG report here that looked at the finance sector. And we can see here that in a type of industry that requires a lot of existing experience and functional and departmental knowledge, what we see here is that there's massive skills gaps requiring help. From ESG reporting disclosure, that's the compliance stuff, financial modeling, designing new products in the finance space, for example, and then integrating risks into your various sustainability frameworks. But then when they looked at what are the effective ways that people like to learn and upskill within the organization, they prefer on-the-job learning delivered by industry. They prefer established micro-credential programs, and they see value in apprenticeships. So we're already seeing a shift within organizations within this finance sector example here. That shows that people are interested in upskilling. They want to get involved. They want to work within their current organization, and they believe that upskilling can happen as well. And this is the benefit of what upskilling can do within an organization. We see 70% of professionals find sustainability courses beneficial in this study. More than 50% of professionals see their responsibilities increase post-course. And so this indicates this dynamic way of looking at hiring and talent pathways within an organization as well. All right, so to wrap up, what can you do now as a hiring manager? So you can shift from this almost system one thinking to system two thinking, where you take a step back, consider how you're addressing your hiring, what kind of biases that you're going into your hiring methodology. And we need this mindset shift to find the right sustainability talent out there. We need to look at potential rather than just traditional sustainability-aligned backgrounds that have academic experience, and focus more on this dynamic shift that people are invested in. We also need to work with our upskilling partners to help to actually tell them what skills do you need within your organization going forward. And then finally, we need to also partner, not just with the hiring manager, but with your wider talent and HR program to really embed the right talent pathways to help this dynamic model as well. All right, so to wrap up, the instinct of many CEOs is to prioritize external hiring to address all skill gaps, including sustainability. Are you falling into this trap? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. So our last speaker, we have Taj Eldridge, who's the Managing Director of Jobs for the Future, and he's going to talk to us about how to engage people who are not necessarily very aware about climate or climate jobs, and how we can extend our reach beyond the people that we're typically talking to. So help me in welcoming Taj.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hopefully, after this, we have some really robust discussions. There's been a lot of great things that's been happening here. We're so proud to work with organizations like Work on Climate, Climatebase, Terra.do, OnePointFive, and others. So I'm Dr. Taj Eldridge. As was said, I'm the Managing Director for Climate Innovations at JFF. I'm also known as wearing many hats, both literally and figuratively. Before doing the work here at JFF, I was an investor, still am, where I own a fund in the climate space. So I invested in other climate funds and invested in other startups. I also led the accelerator funds at Los Angeles, for the city of Los Angeles, their accelerator called LACY, as well as the University of California, opened their fund up to focus on the climate and transportation space. So from that lens, as an investor, I started seeing a problem as I was making these investments in these companies was, do we have enough adequate workforce to ensure that my investment is going to make money in the future and also be impactful? So that's what really kind of led me to this work with JFF. The work we're doing at JFF around climate and workforce is funded by Ares, the private equity fund and their foundation. And they too have the same idea around it. So I want to give some background on it as well. So one of the things that we look at is the idea of the intersection of climate and workforce within Jobs for the Future. Jobs for the Future is a 40-year-old organization that's been focusing on the idea of climate, workforce, and education. If you can remember, there was this conversation years ago about bricks versus clicks, whether or not you should have a website or online presence. That impacted the way people learned, that impacted the way people worked. And that's an example of how JFF has really navigated that space. To me, we're in a similar space right now where we're talking about the idea of climate and how do we focus on that space. One of the things we did with this grant that I focused on at JFF, this $20 million grant that we focused on, is providing funding for universities, funding for nonprofits, and funding for workforce development boards for them to train and place individuals into climate jobs across the US in the next 5 years. One of the things we really concentrate on is the idea of diversity. Usman kind of mentioned it on this slide, but one of the things I want us to think about is the idea of what diversity really means. For us, diversity means a way of thinking and a different way of thinking. So it can be racial and gender diversity, which we talked about, but I also want people to think about geographic diversity. All of us are here in San Francisco, where the climate conversation is more robust. But go back to where I was born in Texas. Do you think the same conversation will be more robust? Or Tennessee or some of these other places as well? But there are still people who are there that are impacted by the climate situation. There are still people there who need jobs. There are still people there who need an opportunity to get into this space. So one of the things we've been talking about is the idea of climate code switching. We have to talk about the climate issue different ways for different people in different areas. So for example, when we deploy our foundation or money into Texas or into Missouri or into Mississippi, we don't call it climate jobs. We don't call it green jobs. We don't call it sustainable jobs. We call them jobs, further quality jobs. And if we're talking about the jobs of the future, if the future is going toward a more climate friendly future, then those are what those things are. Anshuman mentioned the idea of all jobs are climate jobs or can be climate jobs, and we totally agree. And I think the opportunity for us is to look at the companies that are not just tech companies, but legacy companies that have the opportunity to focus on ways to be more decarbonized in their space and to think about it on that end. So for us, the idea for us is to look at how can we have this conversation and talk about the opportunities around climate and make sure that we're talking to people who may not have gone to college, people who may have went to a community college, people who may not have a degree and going from high school to apprenticeship programs. And so I think those inputs are part of the idea that we need to think about when we're talking about these climate jobs and climate opportunities. So things like this are important for us to partner with organizations like Work on Climate and Climatebase and others, because what we see is this expansion of the idea of how can we get jobs in this space. Lastly, what I would say too is that what we've been talking about is this idea of lifelong learning. So for us, it's more than just about the degrees that you have that you're getting out from to get in this space. My degree, undergrad degree, was in poetry and literature, even though my master's degree and PhD is in economics. So what that means for us is that we need to make sure that we're focusing on the idea of climate or skills-based solutions and skills-based learning. And skills-based learning for us is ways to get jobs into the climate space. There's an opportunity for us to think about how can we include these communities that are often more impacted, but never have the opportunity to think about the jobs in this space as well. So that's one of the things we talk about a lot in the space of what we're doing around climate and workforce at JFF. So I wanted to keep this brief since I was the last speaker, because I know we had a lot of different data on it. I mentioned the program that we focus on called CREST, Climate Resilient Employees for a Sustainable Tomorrow, but also what JFF does is being a creator, being a partner. We're proud to have Terra.do as one of our investments with our fund. We're proud to work on Climate and others around the things we're doing about people getting into this space from different areas. So I'll leave everyone with this. We have to think about sometimes having these conversations around climate and the opportunities with people who are not in this room. Because a lot of times we can be so myopic in our focus that we forget that we need to change our language, sometimes change the way we look at things to ensure that we're getting people into this space as well. So I'm looking forward to the rest of this conversation, more of the workshops on it. And thank you so much for inviting all of us here at Cisco for this great conversation around climate and workforce. Thank you so much.
All right, so you can all breathe. The presentations are done. Scooching.
I didn't even know it was there, so I was talking through it.
Yeah, there you go, all the slides. Okay, so we're going to go into the workshop portion of the afternoon. I'm going to get to the slide in a second. And all right, there we go. Okay, so what we're going to do is go into some breakout groups. In the breakout groups, I'm going to tell you in a second what we're going to do. The breakout groups are going to be themed. So I want you to select a theme that you want to talk about, something that's hopefully related to the work that you do. And the second thing is I want you to identify a challenge. So select one member in your group who is currently facing a specific challenge related to the topic that you've chosen. And then I want you to discuss that challenge. So talk about the details. What are the barriers that this individual is facing? And then I want you to talk about solutions based on the insights that we've gathered from the speakers today. The idea by the end of this workshop is that you will actually brainstorm and outline 2 to 3 actionable steps to address the challenge. So I really want you guys to not only absorb this information, but think about how to take this information and apply it in your jobs as you step out of SF Climate Week. So I want to make sure that you guys are choosing strategies that are really practical and doable as you step out of this room. All right, so after we do this 30-minute exercise, we will come back together and maybe we'll have a couple of groups share, and we'll be off to our networking, and there's some more refreshments outside and some food that you can grab. What else should I mention? Once we break into the groups, please select between 4 to 7 people to be in your group. And if you don't have enough people, or if you don't have an individual on your team that is facing a challenge based on that theme, then just try to select a challenge that is as close as possible to, to that theme. All right, so here are the groups. I'm gonna have all of you guys stand up in just a second. I would want group 1, people who are interested in the theme of group 1, go to the right-hand corner over there. Group 2 will be kind of in the middle of the room. Group 3 at the end of the corner of the room, the right-hand corner. Group 4 over there, group 5 in the middle, and group 6 will be right where I'm at. And then you guys will split into groups, and you feel free to stay in this room, or you can even step out into, there's a couple of chairs and desks outside of this room. So, yeah. Any questions before we stand up?
So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's right. And I will also give you guys worksheets to remember what you guys are discussing. Okay? Go for it. Girls.
Yes.